Okay, we are in a discussion of AWS solution architect. Under that, we are in IAM discussion of IAM, identity and access management. So we are further discussion of IAM. So we discuss the mechanism of federation previous um, video. So we're going to go a little bit more about federation. So what is federation? Federation allow external identities to access AWS resources without creating IAM users in the portal. Sorry, enabling centralized identity management across environments, right? So you got here, sorry, in a picture AWS Identity Federation. So here the external identity providers, right? So you can use Corporate Active Directory, a SAML 2.0 provider, OpenID Connect, OAuth 2.0, and then identity federation with AWS Identity and Access Management, and then use services in AWS, right? So we just go more, a little bit more details. So SAML 2.0 federation, so enterprise identity providers, right? That's integrate with the Active Directory, Okta, one login. They are some of the SAML2 federation providers, right? So enable a single sign-on to AWS console, so you can use single sign-on, and then AWS SSO, single sign-on, centralized across access management, integrated with AWS organizations, right? Manages access across multiple AWS accounts. So this one enable to use in multiple AWS accounts, right? Web Identity Federation for social identity providers, supports Google, Facebook, Amazon, and use Cognito for mobile and web apps. So using Cognito for mobile apps, just like JWT, right? JSON Web Tokens, custom identity broker for non-standard providers. Example, legacy LDAP. That's lightweight data access protocol, right? LDAP uses STS, ASIM role API, right? So this is again federation benefit, eliminate IAM user management, uses existing identities, provide temporary credentials, right? Um, so you got some sort of picture here. The user, SAML 2.0 identity providers, web identity providers, AWS single sign-on, custom identity broker. So use SAML to ascertain, right? ID token under web identity provider. So AWS SSO credentials, custom token, and then they provided this one into AWS STS security token service, and then they will provide IAM temporary credential to AWS services, right? So we are going to talk about further AWS identity and access management. So we have understood what federation. So now the standard methods we using for federation. Now this IAM, right? We use principle of a least privilege, right? uh, grant minimum permission needed to perform task, right? Use IAMA roles with a specific permission. Implement a permission boundary to limit the scope. Regularly review and audit permission. So see that in here, principle of least privilege is basically the most important part, right? It says you only give minimum permission, whatever needed to perform the task, right? So minimal privileges, right? And then user privileges and admin privileges. So see that privileges are becoming more powerful in admin, and then user less, and then minimal privileges, right? So this one gives us a sort of idea. So it allows you to separation of duties. So divide critical functions between different users, right? Use IAM group for role-based access. So groups, you create a group, that group has same permission. Each user's got the same permission. Implement approval workflows for sensitive action, right? So if you have any sensitive actions, maybe you uh, implement approval workflow. Once it's approved, you can perform the task, right? Can request before you do perform the task. Enforce multi-person approval for critical changes. So task will be done after few people given the approval, right? Centralized identity management. Use AWS single sign-on or I, IAM Identity Center. So managing, integrate with existing identity providers, right? Implement federation with SAML 2.0. Enforce consistent access policies across accounts. So you're enforcing consistent access policies across different accounts, right? So mm, just giving in a sort of idea. So here you giving you a temporary credentials eliminate long-term static credentials, right? Use temporary security credentials. So once logging in and perform the task, and then it cancels, and then implement IAM roles for EC2 instances. So implementing IAM roles feature for services EC2 instance which needed access to the other services. Utilize role assumption for cross-account access. Role assumption feature for cross-account access. Account accessing a different account from this account to the other one. Enable automatic credential rotation. So enabling time with the automatic credential rotation. Rotation means a change in within a time period. Yeah. Enforce multi-factor authentication for all users. So you can enforce enhanced security to multi-factor authentication for all users. Can be applied at account level. Okay, so now we're going to talk about least privilege in AWS IAM. So RBAC, rollback access control, and ABAC, right? That is attribute-based access control, right? Two different things. First one is a rollback access control, and the second one is um, attribute-based access control. So let's have a look at what is the difference, right? Granting only the permissions required to perform a specific task, right? Nothing more, right? That will gives these benefits, right? Reduce security risk, right? So only giving least permission will reduce the risk touching um, unnecessary actions on resources, limit blast radius of compromised credentials, right? And it's going to limit the compromise credentials blast radius, complies with the regulatory requirement. So it complies with the regulatory requirement. And then access control models are back ABAC. That means attribute based access control. Permissions based on job functions, right? Permissions based on attributes. Tag simpler management for larger teams, more flexible and scalable, right? Let's have a look the difference between RBAC and ABAC, right? So role-based access control. So user given a role, and then that role gives you the permission. So user needs another role, we assign that use to another role, right? So that gives permission in that role, right? Simple role assignment, fixed role permissions. So we know the permissions in the roles. So that permissions are the ones going to be assigned to user. There's no changes, easier to implement, and you can create role hierarchies, right? Role pro- propi- proliferation issues, role proliferation issues. I had to find out what is this proliferation issues. Didn't know. Need to find out what is the meaning of proliferation issues. Okay, so so attribute based access control, right? So user, right, and attribute, user, resources, environment, permission. So it defines the attribute in this one, right? Fine-grained access control, context-aware decisions, right? Dynamic policy evaluation, more complex implementation, greater flexibility, right? All right, so that is the major difference between these two RBAC, role-based access control, attribute-based access control. Sorry, in this one, role got some sort of permissions, and here they change attribute user resources and environment, and that will give you the permission. So identity management options. So IAM uses long-term credentials for individuals. Federation authentication via external identity providers, the temporary. Group membership, assign permission to collection of users. Instance profiles, grant EC2 instances permission to AWS services. So we giving uh, granting instance to use to able to use the services, right? So give us your graph, right? Uh, Security rating 1 to 5, management complexity 1 to 5. I think 1 is less and 5 is more. So instant profile. So your security rating is somewhere around 3, right? I think it's somewhere around 3. That's right. Instant profiles, right? Security rating is good, very high, right? And then groups, it's in the middle area. So federation is a good, both security rating and then management complexity is a bit of a high. Uh, this one is a low. Both of them are a little bit low, right? Just getting an idea. how much, how complex they are to be going to be implemented, right? Now we're going to look into a little bit more about attribute based access control, ABAC. So what is ABAC? What is attribute based uh, access control? ABAC is authorization strategy that defines permission based on attributes, tags attached to users and resources, right? More flexible than RBAC. So it's a more granular. It scales better with growing organizations, right? Reduce policy management overhead, right? So ABAC versus RBAC access control methods, right? So RBAC, role-based access control. So this is based on user roles, right here. So admin got access to databases, got access to API, and then admin got access to file, right? Uh, then user role got only access to files, right? So based on user roles, what is the role? The given the control, simple implementation, right? Implementation is simple because what you have to do is according to role, you will give the permission limited flexibility. The flexibility, more granular control is a bit limited, right? So attribute-based access control, right? That's all depend on tags, right? The user ID, right? And then you can tag the department, right? And then you can tag time, and you can tag IP, and according to that, you can tag these services, whatever access needed, based on multiple attributes. So more granular control here, right? And context aware decision, right? What need to be used, and then complex but flexible, more granular control you can have in ABAC, attribute based access control. So principal tags, so attribute attached to a IAM entries, right? Users roles, right? So they will attach attributes to entries that user, right? Okay, so we can have like a department, finance, HR, engineering, right? And then you can attach project, alpha, beta, gamma, whatever. And then another attribute can be an environment, dev, test, production, right? And then resource tags. What are the resource tags? Attributes attached to AWS resources, right? The owner, team A, team B, environment, dev, test, production, confidentiality, confidentiality, right? Uh, public, private. So that's access based attributes based control. You can give like more granular control tags, right? See that uh, you got bit of a not clear, but I can read ABAC attribute based. So Alice, right? Finance, the manager, financial report, right? Uh, and here Bob, IT, development, right? Department, development tools, IT. Uh, can't see what it is. Development or something, I think. Yeah, this person. All right, whatever the names, the finance, HR. So you got a financial report access, and then HR database, so HR sort of sort of resource tags, right? Here. Uh, let's have a look whether we can see what is here also. I think to click on that should be, I can't see that one, but I can see in this one what is saying, right? Okay, so allow. All right, let's have a look how this diagram was. Okay, the request, user makes the request, right? Uh, IAM policy evaluation, here that evaluate the policy, right? Checks, principal tags, right? And then you get resource tags, right? And tag matching logic, and then decision allows. If tag doesn't match, deny. If tag match, allow. So request, policy evaluation, principal tags, and resource tags. So principal tags are like these ones, and then resource tags are on resources. So that's how it makes a decision, right? Okay, so here we get the policy conditions, key attribute-based access control conditions, operators, right? String equals AWS principal, tag, department, string like AWS resource tag project for all values, match all values in a set. For any value, match at least one value in a set. Sort of the way the granular control, we got a role based versus attribute based tag. So, um, all right. So we're going to go through this one as well. Got maybe another 6 minutes. So AWS identity and access management, right? So we still going in these granular details of authentication. So authenticate into AWS. All AWS services are API driven via HTTP or HTTPS, right? Application program interface driven, right? All AWS services are application in programming interface driven. They go through HTTP or HTTPS, right? Authentication required for AWS Management Console, CLI, command line interface, and SDK, right? Development kit, right? System development kit. So two authentication types, static identity, long-term credential, and temporary identity, short-term credential, which is mainly a what do you call federation, right? All right. So AWS authentication flow, client authentication method, right? Management console, then go to API gateway, application program interface gateway, and then we'll go to AWS service, right? And then CLI, right? Command line interface, API gateway, and SDK, system development kit. That goes API gateway to here, right? Each client authenticates using credentials, IAM user roles to make API call to AWS service. So all of them are calling this API, right? API calls to AWS services. So static identity, username plus password, console access, access key ID, secret access key, CLI access, right? Command line interface SDK need to be authenticated using access key ID and secret access key, right? Similar to username and password, but core, which is different. X.509 certificates, HTTPS API request. That secure request, right? Warning, no automatic rotation. So in these cases, there's no automatic rotation. The temporary identity, short-term credentials, 15 minutes to 36 hours. That means 1.5 days, I think 36, 24 plus 12. AWS Security Token Service, STS, provide you short-term tokens, automatic expiration. So will be expired within a certain short duration. Support IAM roles and federation. So they support roles and federation, right? Sorry. Um, so I'm going to go through IAM process, authentication and authorization pro simple. I've got a pro chart diagram. So use for application, so which is needed authentication request, right? Let me have a look with it. Okay, no, it's not happening. Then verify identity. AWS IAM service requesting authentication from that. So it's trying to verify the identification. So identity validation. No access denied, right? And then yes, principal establish authorization process after authentication authorization. So it will evaluate policies, identity-based policies, resource-based policies, what is the permission boundary, and service control policies, session policies, and then it's going to take a decision, allow access granted, deny access denied, right? So authentication process identity verification confirms who is requesting access. So it's going to confirm who is requesting access, right? It supports long-term credentials, passwords, and access keys. Support temporary credentials via roles and federation. So temporary credentials, optional multi-factor authentication for enhanced security. And then you go authorization process. Once you are authenticated, so policy evaluation, determine what actions are allowed. Explicit deny, always override any allow, right? Default implicit deny unless explicitly allowed, right? Role trust policies control who can assume the role. Permission boundaries set maximum permission. So I'm going to explain this explicit deny and implicit deny in the next time. So explicit deny is actually you in a policy, you're denying in a policy is telling this is denied, right? But implicit deny means you say something is allowed, two actions are allowed, but rest of the actions are not allowed by implicit deny. So that's what explicit deny and implicit deny means. But we're going to discuss that one in a more precisely in one of the other slide. I think it's in uh, one or two slides after. All right, so that's how authorization process works. So AWS IAM role permission flow. So this is a role, right? So identity and access management, this role, right? See that the role. So you can do S3 storage, get object, put object, these two actions, and then EC2 compute, start instance. So you can start instance in EC2 compute. So Lambda invoke function. So in a Lambda serverless, you can invoke function. DynamoDB database, put item, query item. So in this role, if one of them assigned to this role, So these are the actions permitted in this role, right? Okay, all right. I think we already got about 30 minutes now, so I'm just going to end this video and we'll continue from next video. Until then, thank you very much.